All right, so if we could call the meeting, if I could have a roll call, please.
Okay. Mike Davenport.
Here.
Sherelle Fuller.
Here.
Terry Pavicic.
Here.
Thank you. Rick Pavanato.
Here.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Here.
Haley Grubich. Here. And Ariel Johnson.
Here.
Sounds like we have a quorum, so if we could stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did I hear Terry even in the
Terry's
background?
there, hey.
Is she-
I'm not sure she was standing.
I don't think she's standing.
No, I'm afraid I was not.
All right, so first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. If I could have a motion to approve.
Make a motion for the Board of Education to approve the resolution to adopt, oh wait, I'm on the wrong one. Sorry, Mike.
It's all right.
Motion for the Board of Education to approve the minutes of the September 16, 2019 business meeting.
And
Do you want to do them all?
do them all. We have September 16th business meeting, September 16th closed meeting, October 7th special workshop, and October 7th closed meeting.
Yep,
Yes.
make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Joanna or Sherelle?
Oh,
Joanna.
Joanna, thank you, sorry.
Yes, or was it you?
It was Sherelle.
It was Sherelle?
It was
It was Sherelle.
Thank you.
We're falling apart without Nancy. Can we have a roll call? Yeah, right?
Rick Pavanato.
Like soft and suspicious stuff.
Sherelle Fuller.
aye.
Terry Pavicic.
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is reception of visitors. The agenda tonight includes two opportunities to speak. The first reception is intended for audience members to address the board about any item that we're going to be talking about tonight and deliberating about, and the second is for anything else you might want to talk to us about. So if there's anybody who might want to come forward, now's the time to do it for items that are on the agenda. Doesn't appear that we have any, so next we will go to recommendations and reports of the superintendent. The first item, I can see somebody waiting in the wings over there, presentation of District 99 Education Foundation check to, yes. So please, come forward, Mrs. Beckman.
President of the Education
Julia Beckman,
Foundation.
I have the honor of being president of the District 99 Foundation Board, and I get to come here a lot. It's so much fun.
Yes.
So this is an especially fun, we appreciate all the work the teachers do to develop the grant proposals that they do, but this one's kind of especially fun. We're presenting Downers Grove North Fine Arts Department. Beth Reardon is here to explain to you a little bit about what it is. I will just mention it's about ukuleles, but she's going to tell you the rest.
Good evening. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm here with my colleague Diane McClellan, who's one of our multi-needs students at North. And together, teachers. At North, let's go. You'd love to be a student again, right? We're always students.
Yeah.
She's taught me a lot, actually. Yes, but Diane and I have worked for the past, 8 or 9 years with our All Access Choir at North, which is a group that features general education students and multi-needs students kind of coming together side by side and working together to build their musicianship and foster relationships. And we've primarily focused on singing as our primary activity. Some of the students have used percussion instruments to participate. And we were looking for a way for some of our nonverbal students to kind of find a voice. And some of the students said to us, well, we would love to learn how to play the ukulele. And I thought, well, we could teach everyone to play the ukulele, but we just need ukuleles. And so, we are excited to be in the possession of 20 ukuleles, and it's going to get a little bit chaotic, but we are really excited to teach everyone and have everyone building musicianship in an instrumental way and have the opportunity to have their voice heard instrumentally if they are not singing, and they may choose that they'd rather be playing. And so we're trying to bring another level to our All Access Choir, and we're really excited about that. So thank you so very much.
It's a great project. Let me present you this.
Thank you so much.
Don't try taking it to the bank.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And thanks to the board, too, for considering this. I suspect it's on your agenda, so.
It is.
Yes,
Be good.
yes.
We will absolutely be updating you with photos and videos and
Yes, we really like that. And I will definitely be attending a concert when those ukuleles are present.
oh,
Do you
absolutely.
have any questions?
No, thank you. You obviously love what you do, because you're just beaming.
It's such a
And-
joy, and this group is really a very special group, and it's exciting to have an opportunity to sort of raise the bar and give them a new opportunity, so, yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this, because it's above and beyond, so, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to the foundation for supporting it and helping make it possible. So, all right.
Now we need to we gotta
Pictures.
get picture time.
All the board members have to be in a picture.
Oh, do we?
No.
No. We lean back. All right. Thank you. All right. All right. I think next we have diversity.
Yep, update on diversity recruiting,
Yeah.
and I'm going to turn this one over to Pete to give his annual report on this long-term board goal.
All right, and so Tony's helping me in the back for some of the different links and whatnot that we'll see here within the presentation. So the Diversity Committee is part of the overarching umbrella of diversity and equity work that we're doing as a district. So just giving you an idea of the number of people who served on that committee during the last school year and kind of the overarching charge that group has undertaken. As we are all familiar, go ahead, Tony. There are various challenges in the hiring of diverse staff. One good news to report to you is that the law eliminating the test of the law requiring the test of basic skills was eliminated in August. The test had a 25% pass rate and was a huge reason why so few students were coming out of college with a teaching license. We're hopeful that this will help the state moving forward, but it's going to take some time to overcome the damage that has been done in terms of people flocking away from education. So some of these others we've talked a little bit about in the past, so I'm not going to go over those again, but we're hoping that this change will allow more students to go into and stay in education. Because what has happened most recently is by their sophomore year in most of the education programs in the state of Illinois, they would take the test of basic skills. And then if they passed that, they were allowed to continue moving forward. If they didn't, then they were stopped. And so we already had small numbers going into education, and then when you further diminish that pool because of the test, that caused us to be in a situation why we have so many shortages throughout the state for educators in general, and then multiply that when we start talking about our diverse staff across the state. So ways that we have gone about in trying to attack these issues, these challenges. Go ahead, Tony. As you are aware, we put equity and inclusion section on the website, and we'll go to that here in a minute. We have worked at getting out to colleges and universities, talking with them, inviting student observation and student teaching to occur in our district. We've taken a look at our hiring practices, we've attended job fairs, and we've gotten the message out on the state and national level. And then we'll look at each of these individually here as we move forward. So if Tony would go to the link on the website. So this is something that's important for candidates to see when they're learning about a district, where they'll be working, possibly living, and what we're about as a district. It's also important for all of our current staff to know that this is something we value as a district. We're going to continue to work on this. And this year, actually, as I interviewed finalists for our teaching positions, many minority candidates commented about seeing this information on the website, and one of the things that kind of piqued their interest about coming to District 99. So Tony, if you just scroll kind of slowly down the website, you can see there's the diversity committee group from last school year, the people that were there that day for the picture. We talk a little bit about the group, then we talk about some of the professional development that we're offering in terms of the SEED program. And then as this continues, the District 99 equity team that Rob has talked to you about in the not too distant past. So this is a nice one-stop place, and Rob did a lot of the, I think did all the work actually in putting most of this piece together here on the website, but this paints a pretty nice picture of what all we're doing in the various areas regarding diversity in the district. And so it's, as the candidate said, it's nice for them to see as they're thinking about taking a position in District 99. Getting out to the colleges and universities, we'll give Tony a second to get to that next slide. We're at the point now where I get emails from education department leaders at various schools telling me, hey, here's a student teacher candidate who's exactly the type of person that you're looking to bring into District 99. And this is the second year in a row that we've had really strong numbers of students doing their student teaching in District 99. So in 2 years, we've hosted over 80 student teachers. So as we talk about, go ahead, Tony. Colleges and universities at various times, different people in the district, including myself, are invited to go and speak to the education programs. So it's an opportunity for us to tell our story, as well as get to know some of them and encourage the various students to consider doing their student teaching and their student observation hours in District 99. Social media, we continue to post on our Twitter account. So if you have not been there, this would be the kind of thing that you would see when you go to this website. This is the work of Jill Browning and Kristen Kelly that constantly update this and put information out here. Obviously, we're promoting our open positions, and hopefully we're reaching candidates this way who may not follow the traditional path in trying to seek employment. As we take a look at our hiring practices, obviously it's important that we have the diversity mindset for all of our candidates, and there are universal questions about diversity in each of the various stages in our hiring process. And we begin with a video interview for everybody who's applying for a position in the district. We talked about the video interviews. This is a way for us to learn about a candidate from the answers that they're giving us before we ever start looking at the paper that they submit as a part of their application. So we're not automatically eliminating folks based on what college they went to, what clubs or activities they belong to, or any other pieces of information that might be part of our unconscious bias that we bring to the hiring process. This past hiring season, we've actually made a few more adjustments for our interview advisory teams. So if Tony clicks on this first link, this is a document that was shared with all of our interview advisory teams. I'm not going to read this to you or expect you to be able to read the font here. But basically, it's making it very clear that the board goal is to do as much as we can in the way of hiring outstanding, qualified, diverse candidates in District 99. And this tells a little bit about that story. And then there are also 2 links in here that are also on the PowerPoint that we'll get to in a second, that each interview advisory team member watched before they took part in the various interviews. So if we go back, Tony, to the 2 links, these are like 2.5, 3 minutes each, and we thought we'd play them for you so you get a sense of what they're watching.
Bus is coming.
Can you take care of this for me?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Wait, let me guess. You had a very different mental picture in your head when I said boss. Did it look more like him? Don't worry. You're not alone. Our brains make automatic associations without us even realizing it. And while these associations help us make rapid-fire decisions, they can also be influenced by our potential blind spots. Prototype bias happens when we have a preconceived notion of who we think would be right for a particular role based on stereotypes. These mental pictures are based on who we've seen succeed in the past and can influence who we think will succeed in the future. Let's test the theory. Don't worry, just between us. I'm going to say a word, and I want you to point to the word on the screen that you most associate with it. Ready? Let's go. Delicate. Powerful. Caring. Family. Career. Strong. What just happened? Well, if you're like most people, you associated communal words with female and assertive words with male, because those implicit associations are ingrained in our unconscious mind. A network of researchers from prominent universities developed the implicit association test. This test helps people identify their potential unconscious biases across a variety of dimensions. These types of ingrained associations can often shape our prototypes for who's qualified to lead in the workplace. Take the orchestra. When orchestras started conducting blind auditions in the 70s, the number of female musicians shot up 20%. So either women suddenly played exponentially better when behind the curtain, or the conductors weren't aware they had a prototype bias towards male musicians, and this bias was costing them talent. Another study found that the exact same resumes with more black-sounding names received 50% fewer callbacks than those same resumes with traditionally white names. The idea of prototype bias cuts even deeper than that. Studies show we often have prototypes for the people we believe would succeed in a job, and we may unconsciously change our criteria to help those people get the job. You may be thinking, I'm not like that. Well, the participants in a study on prototype bias thought the same thing. And ironically, those who thought they were most objective ended up being the most biased. Blind spots can span any dimension of diversity and can potentially lead to bad decisions. Not only can blind spots limit our own choices, they may result in missed opportunities that don't lead to the best possible outcomes. The good news is that there are ways to overcome prototype bias. You can start by setting objective criteria. This can help prevent you from being swayed by irrelevant factors. And you can double check your objectivity by sharing the why behind your decisions. Lastly, don't make assumptions based solely on your idea of fit, because when it comes to success, one size doesn't fit all.
All right, so the second video is about broadening perspectives, and in the interest of time, we won't play that one here now for you, but it's similar. And then the department chair, designated administrator, has a conversation with the interview advisory teams about the document, the films that the little clips that they've watched, the idea that they are in fact advisory, and the final decision will rest with the building administrator. And so the feedback that we received from people on the interview advisory teams was that this was very helpful, caused them to think about things in a different way than we maybe have traditionally, and so we will probably look to continue doing either this or something similar to this as we move forward in hiring this coming hiring season. Okay. Here's a list of schools that we attended for job fairs last year, including 4 that were out of state. I'll talk more about those here in just a minute. Advantages to us now in terms of the out-of-state schools. ISBE is now allowing full reciprocity with out-of-state licenses. You may remember we went through a period of time where it was very difficult if you didn't attend an Illinois university to receive licensure within the state. And so that's caused us to be able to go to other states and recruit easier than it had been in the past.
Pete, is that 100%, or is there still hurdles that they have to jump through a little bit?
No, it's pretty much 100% right now. Like if your state says you are qualified for a license in Michigan, then
Or
they're going
Missouri,
to,
or
any state. If that state You have to have that state's license.
Then you could come here.
You can come here and they will give you an Illinois license.
That's a big change.
It's a huge change.
It's a huge change. That's a game changer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we were losing a lot of teachers to other states that allowed that. So people would get their
Right.
teaching endorsement here and then go somewhere else because it was easy,
Sure.
It was easy to go, but you couldn't come.
couldn't come.
Yeah.
And it was very frustrating for our Illinois high school students who went out of state
Right.
to get their teaching degree and
Wanted
then
to come
wanted
back.
to come back. And
They couldn't.
they were like, this is not worth it to me to have to go through these extra hoops.
Was this July or January?
This was more in the
Soon.
January-ish time
Yeah,
period.
this was very
because-
soon. This is
yeah,
new.
This was in advance of last spring's job fairs.
So I don't think I even understood that other states were allowing that to happen. I just thought it couldn't happen at all.
No, it was unique to Illinois. This
Yeah.
was part of the conversations that were surrounding Senate Bill 7 and the changing of the evaluation system because we were going to fix education by making sure that students were going through Illinois education programs because obviously we would know better than anybody else how to prepare students to do well here in Illinois.
Yeah.
And so that was unique to our state.
Okay. Senate 7, okay.
All right. At the job fairs this past year, for the first time, what I did is, as folks would come up to the table, or I would go seek them out if I saw somebody in the job fair, especially diverse candidates, I would invite them to the table, and then they would fill out a Google form for me, which had first name, last name, their email address, and their teaching area of expertise. And then I would send them a miniature version of our video interview. So I could tell the candidates that if they shared their information with me, I could guarantee that somebody in the district, me to start with, would have the opportunity to listen to answers that they had to some questions that we had put together in advance. So for example, we're going to give you the opportunity to see one young lady and her answer to the very first question.
I always wanted to be a teacher in the back of my mind. I always really enjoyed being in school. I always really enjoyed my classes. But it wasn't until college when I did a summer internship as an SAT tutor in the South Bronx that I really decided that I wanted to pursue teaching as a career. The reason for this was that while I was SAT tutoring, I realized that a lot of my students did not have access to quality public education in the same way that I had had access to a really good public education my entire life. And I realized that my students were not receiving the services they needed, specifically in ESL, as I was working with a lot of immigrant students. And so that got me really interested and passionate about school equity and made me want to be a teacher so that I could work towards achieving greater equity amongst public school students in the United States. After college, I worked for 2 years as an elementary school teacher, and I really enjoyed my experience as an elementary school teacher, but I decided that I wanted to pursue secondary education because I really wanted to dig deeper into one subject matter, which is going to be social studies for me because I studied history in college and I'm really passionate about social studies. And so I decided to pursue a master's in secondary social studies education and also get a certification in ESL so that I would be really well prepared to help students for whom English is an additional language.
Okay, so after viewing the video clips, I would send the department chairs the videos of the strongest candidates in their content area because I was able to sort based on the form that they filled out telling me math, English, science, etc. Actually, that young lady, we almost stole her out of Madison, Wisconsin. She happened to walk into the job fair. She had a master's class going on that evening. She walked into the job fair. I got up and went over and talked to her. Talked to her about the job fair screener. So she filled that out, and she actually was the choice at South High School. Only she decided to stay in Madison at this point in time. So we were disappointed that we were not able, when it was all said and done, to bring her here to District 99. So But as you can see, pretty strong answers for somebody who's just getting started in their career. Obviously piqued Chris Esposito's interest and made it all the way to the point where we actually offered her the job. And we thought we were going to pull that off, but we didn't. But that gives you an idea of what kind of information we're able to pull from doing that and then share it with the various department chairs. And then based on the screener information that I watch, if somebody is a diverse candidate who's strong, if we have an opening, I email those folks with a link to our application and ask them to apply for the position in the district. All right, so here's a smaller size of the overall, the 9 schools, but each year we kind of keep track of how many candidates we're seeing at the various job fairs. And if we go to the next slide, this will total it for you. So entirely, saw 203 candidates. You can see the numbers based on the various ethnicities and races. So for the diverse pool, almost 20%. So that was a higher number than what it has been in the past.
Wow. And that's a combined.
What's that?
Oh,
I thought you had a question. Not a
talking about the
problem.
numbers.
Okay. Moving forward. Last year, as you may remember, we talked a little bit about the Northwell Personnel Administrators, a group that we belong to. We created an educational virtual networking fair and sent that out to lots of different colleges and universities, including the historical black colleges and universities. We saw an increase of 37 people submitting resumes this year as compared to the first year, and we're hoping that number will continue to grow. The young lady who you saw in the job fair screener also completed that, the virtual networking fair for NWPA, and other schools, other districts were disappointed when she told them she was coming here, only to then tell us that she wasn't coming here either, so. So we're hoping those numbers will continue to grow. In terms of getting the message out, I'm currently on the advisory board for the video interview company and the state secretary for the school personnel administrators. So in both those roles, I have opportunities to listen and learn from other colleagues about things that they're doing differently or better than what we're doing, so we can continue to kind of shape what our process looks like. We get an opportunity to, exchange ideas and strategies. So this has been a benefit for me to listen to and talk with colleagues from around the state. So, looking at the total numbers here for the 1920 hiring season, we had 28 minority candidates do video interviews, 25 we interviewed in person, and we hired 8. So this is Group A there went up 4 over the previous year. Group B went up 8 over the previous year, and Group C doubled what it had been in the previous year. And like last year, some of the minority candidates were vying for the same position. So there were a couple instances where we had 5 finalists, they were all minority candidates. We hired 1, and then obviously the other 4 we couldn't hire because we had that one position. So buildings have done a great job in making this a priority, and frankly should be congratulated for the increases that we saw this year. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
I have a question, it may go to Gina. A lot of times, you can compete, when you have student teachers come in, or observers, there's a little bit of saying grow on your own. When we do have teachers come in, student teachers, does it fall under your umbrella, or is it a little bit lower down, like the department chair, to make sure that it's not the teacher, here's my class, goodbye, because it's a lot of work to have a student teacher. It's more work on the teacher than it is to do it right. And I guess, who kind of makes sure that that process, so that teacher says, oh my God, I ain't coming back here again because it's just terrible. Who does it kind of fall under?
So both building admin and the department chair involved.
Okay. To kind of make sure that it is a win-win process, because
that we're supporting.
I've seen it both ways. It's a lot of work to say I want
It
a
is.
student teacher, to do it right. And I've seen some teachers, here's my class, goodbye. And it's not right. And I just wondered if it, because you can really grow your own.
Yes,
And there's a comfort factor in that.
And we also have an introduction to teaching program, which we have.
Yeah,
South
and we-
High
One of our
instructor
teachers,
right
yeah.
here.
And don't they go into middle schools or
They
the
do.
elementary schools too?
Yeah.
We do have that program, yeah.
Yeah. And it's
So-
dual credit with COD, so they start off with some
That's good.
credit as well, so.
Good.
When you say grow your own, what are you saying?
Like say, like at my school, I have teachers at my school that I taught chemistry to.
I remember you saying that.
So, and I'm up to 5. And so it's like, we have students that went to our high school, then went into teaching, and then they come back and student teach, and then they're offered a position, and they end up being very successful. And part of it, I bet there is a comfort factor.
Sure.
You know, you're coming back to people
Okay.
you know, and, but also it's part of the experience where you're not just, and you know what it's more of an inside joke, but you know there are teachers, here's my class, and I'm gone for 8 weeks. And the student teacher is like, I got five schedules and 3 different preps, and it's a disaster. And so where if it comes in and you mentor them and you ease them in, you give them the full load, then you ease them back out, I think it kind of is.
Okay.
So that's, I guess,
Grow your own.
like, I'm not like, maybe there's students at North and South that are gonna go in education.
Got it.
Secondary. And maybe, the student, sometimes it's hard to find a student teaching position in the area that you may want to be in. So maybe they come back, they live at home with mom and dad and student teach in this area versus having to get an apartment, because you're not getting paid to student teach.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, I guess that's what I was just asking, I was just wondering.
yeah.
Because I know I've seen a lot. And it's like, so,
Yeah, I had a similar kind of experience. I had social work interns at Morton High School. Primarily, we wanted Latinos, and 3 of them did stay within the district. And they wanted to work, and that was their whole goal, was to stay within their own school district and help their own community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
but it is hard work. I
Yes.
didn't want any more after that.
It's a lot easier to just teach your own class, yes,
Yes,
yes, it
it's
is.
hard.
Absolutely. All right, any other questions for Pete? All right, moving on. Pete. A revisit of last board meeting's review of insurance premiums. I don't believe anything has changed from the last time, but this is a last opportunity. Oh, wait, one thing has changed.
Yeah, and just through quickly, we had another month of experience. It came in at roughly 103% of the planned. And so that's where the other months had been, so we feel we're making the right increase, a little over 5% in the PPOs. I'm discussing the 2 PPO plans. We're going to increase a total of 7.5%. 5.5% of that is for claim activity to catch up. And then the other 2% is to try and rebuild our reserve a little bit because it has gone down because of the claims coming in over expectations. And another thing is, in our meeting, just so you're aware of it, we agreed to start using a flexible spending account card for our employees so that, and all of their data will be loaded into it so that they can use it for out-of-pocket deductibles and for flexible spending eligible expenditures. So it'll be easier. We're hoping that it'll encourage more faculty, staff, and individuals to use the program.
All right, and that's up for action later this evening, approval of those rates. Any questions on that one? All right, student parent handbook updates. You may remember, this year we moved to a combined district student handbook that is online, with the agreement that we would update it as there was changes in law or practice or those kinds of things, so it'd be more of a living document. However, all student handbooks are board policy, so
the board needs to approve them before those changes actually go into effect. So this is a new practice this year where you're going to see these every so often as updates are made in the law or in practice or procedures. We'll update the document, and then we have a running tally at the bottom of the document of any changes that have been made. So we recommend that the board approves these later in the consent agenda, and you can also expect to see this as a more regular occurrence now that we're working this way. Any questions on those? All right. Master facility plan progress. Well underway in Phase B. We still remember Phase B designing is finishing up. Phase C is well underway in design as well. We have a core team meeting next week. And I would encourage anybody to go on those feeds at North and South to see the progress. Steel started arriving and being put up over the last week, so you can start to see the shape of the new structures show up on those video feeds.
Yeah, they were kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very cool to see. So at South especially, you can start, at North, there's just a couple of posts, but at South, you can start to see walls, you can see the nook. We have trusses going up in the back corner, so pretty exciting to see. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Rob and a couple of guest presenters here to talk about the proposal that's up for a public hearing in a moment, so the public can provide comment on the e-learning program in a moment as it's presented. And then up for action later this evening for flexible or e-learning to allow for days to replace emergency days on the day when school might be canceled due to emergency events. So, Rob?
Thanks, Hank. Good evening, everyone. I brought some teachers with me tonight to share some stories of how they're using some of these practices. So I'm proud to say that I have doubled the size of our audience.
Well
teachers
done.
with us here tonight. Like Hank said, eventually where we're going to get to tonight is talking through these e-learning days, but I thought it was important for us to build our knowledge about practices that are involved in that, and then how we're looking forward, projecting forward with instructional practices. As our facilities are being modernized, we're also working with some teachers to figure out how do we modernize some of our instructional practices. So we're going to start with this concept of differentiated instruction, which is this idea of flexing some things and giving some choice to students inside of the classroom. Really quickly, without geeking it out about curriculum instruction with you, differentiated instruction is, like I said, about flexing those things and making some adjustments so that way each student gets the course that they need at the time that they need it. So some things that teachers might adjust is the content, maybe the process or the learning tasks that they're being asked to do. And it could also be the products. So how do students want to demonstrate their learning that they did throughout that unit? So here to talk with us tonight is Sally. Sally, you can climb over there. Sally's going to talk through how she uses DI practices in her classroom. This is one example. We have many examples, but I thought it would be good for us to hear from a teacher.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sally Heiwig, and I teach in the math department at North High. So I've been trying out some different things with differentiated instruction for a few years now. One of the first things I tried was the use of pretests to help students move through the curriculum at their own pace a little bit. So we start with the list of objectives that we want to achieve. And I can break those down sometimes into some smaller objectives that students maybe already have had exposure to, or things that are simple enough for them to work on via example or with peers. And so then I give them a pretest that's pretty specific to those objectives, and based on how they do on that pretest, I can put them into teams of students that are about at the same ability level that they are. And then I put them into groups in the classroom, and they can work through a set of materials. Maybe it's online resources, maybe it's worked out examples, maybe it's an activity, and they can do that together with their peer group and try to move themselves forward as a group on some of those objectives that they show some prior understanding on. At the end of the session, whether it's a class period or a few class periods, we can can come back together as a class, summarize as a group. Maybe students have some things to present about the things that they learned or the things that they overcame as they learned. And so the whole group moves forward, but sort of at their own pace and with their peers a little bit more than just teacher-led. So that's the first thing I tried. I really enjoyed using that with students because it allows that flexibility a little bit more so than just a standard. The second thing I tried was the student choice is a big part of differentiation. So I used that for reviews. I gave students a set of examples of things that we had looked at previously, things we had learned throughout the course of the unit, and I had them reflect on how well they would be able to work out a similar example, and I had them fill out a survey on what they would like to work more on. So I took their survey results and I put them into teams based on their rankings of what they'd like to work on. And then the next day in class, they were able to work with students that had those same goals in mind on a set of activities to try and brush up on those objectives, review a little bit more intently on those things. And then about halfway through the period, we can switch and they can do another objective that they would like. And at the end of the period, then they can take home any of the other materials that maybe they didn't rank as high. They would still be able to take those home and do those. So students shared in the reflection piece that they really liked being able to choose how they spent their time and that they were able to focus more closely on the things that they needed more help with. And then there was peer support and my support there available for that. Another way that the math department is using differentiated instruction a little bit is through our grade improvement opportunity. So this is our alternative to a reassessment or test retakes. Students take the quiz, and if they don't score as they'd like or they missed points on the quiz, they can do quiz corrections. And the part I really like about this is that they have to do conferencing with me to talk about the corrections. So they meet with me, they talk about the things that they didn't understand as well. We go over that material together in the short conference, and then they've made their corrections. They work between the quiz and the test on studying the material. They do their reviews, they do their homework, and if they do better on the test, then 90% of the grade difference is added back to the quiz. So what I've really liked about this is while it's open for all students, it really gives me a chance to encourage those students who might be struggling, and then I get their attention one-on-one, which can make a big difference in their level of understanding, getting that one-on-one time and that conversation time to work through some of those issues. So those are just a few short ways that I've used differentiation so far, and I hope to continue to use more.
Great, thanks. Before Sally goes back to her seat and we bring up the next round, do any of you have any questions for her?
It's good stuff. It seems so, it's like, why haven't we been doing this all along? It just seems so, I mean, really, it just seems like such a natural way to go about this. And it's such an empowerment for the students, too. And if you don't do well, you don't go, well, oh well, I guess I'm, right? I mean, there's a chance to take ownership of that and do something about it. And because the goal is to learn, not get a good grade, right? And so this really is fantastic.
Yeah. And I should say, we've been offering training on DI to our teachers for quite a few years, and Val's one of our trainers. And so we're seeing every year more teachers expressing interest in exploring these concepts and using them in their classrooms.
Good stuff.
Cool. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
So through Sally's part of the presentation, I hope that you heard and understood that there's a lot of choice and empowerment on the student piece. One thing about that is everything that happened there happens within the four walls of the classroom. So then the next layer of choice that we have come to is asking this important question: is the tasks that we've designed for our students, do they actually need the teacher face-to-face for some of those tasks? And that's a decision for the instructor to make. And if the answer is no, then our next logical question is, well, then why do they need to come to that classroom during that period to work on that work? Is it possible that we could give them all those assignments and they could choose somewhere else in the building to work? Or they can choose when they do that assignment. If the answer is that yes, for this, we do need the instructor there face-to-face with the students, well, then it's important for the students to come to the class during that period. So that gets us into our next concept here, which is this large umbrella of what we call flexible learning. Within that model and that definition is blended. You've probably heard blended learning. We have an example of blended learning in our district. Gina helped us to bring it in. It's a 0-hour consumer ed course that's offered in a blended format. And so the teacher of this course does exactly that. Tells the students, so many days, and the teacher is able to change it, but there's certain days that the students don't have to come to class during that 0-hour. The teacher is still there for them if the students choose to come, but the students don't have to report. Sometimes that comes in the form of the entire class doesn't have to come, and sometimes it comes in the form of creative grouping. So maybe just one group of students comes to class during that time, so the teacher gets more small group time with them. So we brought this course in to solve a very specific problem, which was to give students an opportunity to get consumer ed credit with our teachers. But what it turned out is it's this hotbed of action research for us. So we've been polling our students, getting their perspectives on how things are going in there. And that first bullet point up there was something that surprised us. And we actually saw this as we went to other school districts, this concept of executive functioning skills. So how are students learning to manage their time? How are they learning to organize their materials? And how are they self-monitoring themselves as they go through their learning tasks? So as we poll our students in our consumer ed courses, we found two very interesting things. One is that many of the students in the class said that the most challenging thing about that course was that they had to use these skills in order to be successful. The other thing is that they said the most value they find in that format of the course is that they have to use those skills and learn how to use those skills. So we found out that the students are learning the same thing, but the way in which the course is structured is giving them this additional learning about executive functioning skills. So all of these skills that will be important to them after they leave us, no matter where they go, we have this format now that gives them the opportunity to practice those while it's still a relatively low stakes, safe environment for them. Another thing that we hear commonly about about blended learning is a fear of a reduction in the social interactions that students will have in a blended format, and we find that it's actually the exact opposite. So when we do those creative groupings and we put students together in groups, give them assignments in that way, or we tell a small cohort of that class that they report to class that day, they actually get higher quality and more individual time with their instructor than in our traditional settings. And then they also reach out to each other and they form study groups more often during their flex time than in our traditional setting. So we found the exact opposite. There's actually more social interactions in that model. And the third point is it gives us an opportunity to really personalize learning for students. So figuring out where they are on knowing their executive functioning skills, how to set a schedule or a meeting with a peer so that way they can meet, and then giving us the opportunity to use these DI practices to really figure out which piece of the course and the instruction that they need for their learning. So some common trends that we're seeing in our district is that we have a lot of interest from our teachers on this. In terms of an instructional practice for flexible learning, one example is we had summer school this summer. So the teacher of our biology course in first semester, he found that some of the students in that course were losing the opportunity to go to practice. They were losing the opportunity to go to work. So he got creative and he investigated this and brought in some flexible practices there. So students didn't have to report every single day. If they needed to go to practice, they could go to practice. They knew what their homework was, and then they could interact with him in a virtual environment and then come back to school the next day and get their assignments done. Another very interesting thing that he found in that class is that and we're seeing in some of our other ones, is that even though they're given the choice to not report to that room during that time, some of them are choosing to still come to class because that's their quiet space and that's where they know that they can get things done. So they're also aware of the chances of them not being productive outside of that classroom might be high for some of them, so they choose to report to class and do their work there. We're also seeing examples of this in our world language classes, our science classes, our math classes, and our English classes. So there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of interest around this concept of flexible learning. And like I said, one thing that I want to emphasize is that as our buildings are being worked on. We're not waiting until they're done to then look around and say, well, now how do we use this thing? We're working with our teachers right now to start to investigate practices like this, where they can be creative with the space that will become available. So, our next guests are Lisa and Isabel. The two of them have been working for the past year and a half with a cohort of teachers, one group from North and one group from South, that we titled the Blended Explorers. And so they have been trying some of these practices. They've been helping to guide our way of eventually what professional learning might look like for a teacher who's interested in this.
And like Rob said, the Blended Explorers has been a really great group for us to work with. And a couple of goals of this group. The first one is to challenge each other's thinking. How might learning look different for kids as we try and flex for them? So that's been really neat. And they've all been taking their own journey toward blended. They're not as specific as the consumer ed class he was talking about. This is just people exploring flex learning for kids. Another expectation is that they're actually experimenting within their walls, doing different things that would flex for kids' choice, time, blending things for them as well. So they are experimenting, which is really great. And then the last one, of course, is that we come together and reflect. We're lucky enough, we reflect in our individual buildings, but then we're also, twice a year, we get together and reflect across town. So that's been really neat to see as they learn from each other across at the other school. So that's really neat. And they're all just trying to determine a path for blending or flexing that works for them in their content area. And then one of the ultimate goals of the Blended Explorer is that by the end of the year, we hope that we have a definition of what flexing learning for kids looks like in District 99, as well as a credentialing process. So if other folks decide they'd like to try this as well, we'll have some credentials in place, building on DI like Sally talked about, as how they can get started with that. We have some feedback on from some teachers who are Blended Explorers. And the first one I'll share is the English 1 honors class. That's Chris Bronke. He's at the north side of town. And he's on his second year of really changing things up in his classroom and flexing opportunities for kids and having standards-based items in his class. And I think the kids have really enjoyed it. It's been very eye-opening for them. And to build on what Rob was saying with the executive functioning piece, in his feedback, the students are mentioning that their organization skills have increased and they have to learn how to prioritize their time and stay on task and don't procrastinate. So they've really taken those skills, built them, and they're also transferring them into their other more traditional classes. So that's been a really great benefit from Chris Bronke's experience.
And so Cindy Montero teaches Spanish 3 honors on the south side. She has also been a Blended Explorer for the past year and a half. And she has surveyed her kids, and based on their feedback, we know that students are grateful and they appear to understand that they have been given a privilege. They know they should use their time wisely. And so I have 2 quotes from 2 students. The first one says, I really think that this is going to be a fun and useful experience for me. I'm very surprised that we have been given the opportunity to do something so fun and flexible. And the other student says, this is really helpful for me since I don't have a free period during the day to get help, and my schedule outside of school is busy as well. Thanks. Mike McGinnis teaches Math 3, and this year he has decided to incorporate 2 days of called Wank Days in his class. And what we know is that student ownership of taking notes and understanding the steps they are taking to solve a problem is truly a priority. Many students have realized this is an area of growth. They are starting to understand the value of taking notes properly and using them at the appropriate time. So again, I have 2 quotes from students. The first one says, I like super notes because it is an easy way to put everything we learned into one area. And my favorite, the second one is, I really like super notes because writing everything down that is important helps me understand math. Speaking of math, we have a math teacher that is going to talk to us in a minute or so, but Rob would like to say a few more words.
So one thing I'd like to point out is the work that Lisa hang on, they might ask you questions, that Lisa and Isabel are doing is generating a lot of excitement. And a challenge that we have right now is we have more teachers who are interested in doing this than we have spaces available for students to go to. So we're being creative about scheduling areas of the library, scheduling some resource rooms, and letting students know what their choices are on those days that they flex. But it takes this additional layer of coordination right now because of our limited space, that it can't just be the teacher making that decision. The teacher has to coordinate with them or with their API of what space is actually available for students to go to. The other thing too, like I said, is because of this energy and this excitement, what we're finding is that some teachers really want to jump in right away, and we're finding ourselves having to say to them, slow down a little bit. We haven't figured out what exact training you need for you to be successful with this. And so one of those is like standardizing a communication that goes out to parents. So parents that are in the classes, we have some models of letters that have gone out to parents this year. But just fine-tuning that and then making that the standard letter that goes to parents in the courses to say, here's what you can expect, here's what it is, and here's the places that students can choose to go to. So before they go back to their seats, are there any questions for the two of them?
Doesn't
All
look
right.
like it. Thank you.
both.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's everything that we're doing in a normal school day. And now we're going to pivot a little bit and we're going to talk about these e-learning days because there is some crossover here. So Illinois State Board of Education has given school districts an opportunity to use some of our inclement weather days and make those live learning days that happen off-site. So those are called e-learning days. In preparation for that, last year we had an opportunity, we were sort of between laws, and so we had an opportunity to be creative with President's Day last year. You'll probably remember that. So we had an inclement weather day in November. We used President's Day last year to make up one of those days. So to do that, we established what the protocol was going to look like. We told students, this is how you register your attendance. We gave teachers guidance on here's how you tell students, or these are the criteria you should use, so that way your students know where to go to get their assignment. With that, there was a big lead up. So there were a few days that teachers had to prepare their students for it. And then we set deadlines for after that day of what, when things could be due. That sort of thing. So it turned out that it was a really great time for us to try some things, and that's going to feed into our design this year for using our e-learning days. But first, before we get into that part, Scott is here. Scott is a teacher who did some pretty creative things on that day back in the spring. So he's going to talk to us about what he designed and what his students did on that day.
Good evening. I'm Scott Gollin. I teach math at Downers Grove North. It wasn't just President's Day. Part of the preparation was thinking about what you could do outside of the classroom on a regular basis. So to me, there were kind of three areas that I was focused on. One was instruction, one was assessment, and one was also interaction with the students. So it wasn't just the students out on their own. For the independent learning, so the instruction, we have a couple tools that can be used within the schools. Ed Puzzle is one of them. It's, I believe it's purchased by the district, and it's a program that allows teachers to create instructional videos, and the instructional videos stop at particular points, and the students have to answer questions in order to advance the video. And actually, the teachers participated in one of those as well this year during, I don't know, which one was it, Pete? Was it the
Mandated training video.
There you go, the mandated training video. So another one that we did is Pear Deck. That's becoming very popular with the teachers. This is something where within the four walls, you can create it sort of a presentation, and the students would have to watch the presentation as the slides go on your screen, so you can dictate the pace at which the instruction takes place. Outside of school, there is a student pace learning module or whatever you want to call it, where you can actually assign it to the students, and the students can work through it and answer questions, and all of those questions the teachers get at the end in a nice dashboard, and they can go back through and make comments and talk to teachers or speak to students individually based on the results. The digital conferencing was something that I did a number of times last year through Explain Everything. Explain Everything is an online whiteboard, and it's pretty incredible. I would run review sessions at night. I'd just tell my students that I would be online for an hour at a time, and right before a unit exam, I'd say, you know, here's the code. If you want to join, you may. And I'd have a whole list of students' names on the side. They'd all jump in, and then they'd ask me questions that they had regarding the unit. And I would answer the questions. Everybody could see it. Everybody could talk to each other. Everybody could ask questions. And I could also record the session and post it online for anybody that wasn't present at the time. And then another one that I'm just getting familiar with is Zoom. I've had to do some video conferencing with some people, and this is another thing that I'm going to explore. This is more where you can actually see the people's faces and speak. So that would be something that I might be interested in trying in the future. And then just because you have an online or an e-learning day doesn't mean that you can't assess students. We already talked about Pear Deck, and we also talked about the Ed Puzzle, but quizzes and Quizlet are a couple other ones where students can actually go online. You can open up a quiz or an assessment for a certain period of time, and the students take that, and then the teacher gets all the results, and you can close it at a certain time too. So obviously there would be, you know, some teaching practices that would have to be in place when it comes to, you know, what the expectations are, what would be considered cheating, what would be considered collaboration, yeah. But at the same time, you know, you can set those times where the kids would have to be on there, and you could say, you know, during our class period on this e-learning day, you're required to check into either, you know, the online whiteboard, or there's going to be a quiz that's opened up, or whatever the case might be in that particular situation.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott before he disappears?
Well, thank you for doing all this.
Yeah.
I mean, and for being available for your students at 9 o'clock at night.
It's fun.
I mean, that's.
It's not regular, but occasionally,
yeah. I mean,
sometimes I gotta get away from my kids too. So I just close the office door an hour, and we'll get back to work.
I'm sure early in the morning too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's available at like 6:30 in the morning also. Well,
amazing. It's amazing. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
So one expectation that we set last year with President's Day is we talked to our teachers about the assignment that they give for that day should be meaningful. So it should be coherent with what they're currently learning. It should be an assignment that still pushes the learning forward. So we wanted to make sure that those assignments weren't just assignments that students viewed as wasting their time and not valuable to their learning. So that's the same guidance that we're giving our teachers for this year. We are in the process of adjusting those protocols that we put in place last year because there's some new criteria that with this state law, we have to adjust that a little bit. But with that, what I would like to do now is first to talk through a few opportunities with this. One is, we made up the day last year, but one problem with that model was that the day that we made up fell into a different semester than the day that the school was called off, right? So for our semester courses, first semester missed a day, second semester added a day. And that's something that we see when we use our emergency days anyways at the end of the year. This gives us an opportunity to pull that missed day back into the same semester. So we don't have to worry about that as much. The other thing too is linking it back to what we talked about earlier is this is an opportunity when students are at home or wherever they're at but not at school on that day. It gives them an opportunity to practice their executive functioning skills. And ideally we'll start to build that into the training for the students as they prepare for these e-learning days. So like I said, we are in the process of adjusting those protocols from last year because there's some new pieces of these expectations from ISB. So I just want to go through those because that's ultimately what you'll be seeing in the hearing here is letting us know that our protocol should match the things that ISB says. So this is something that's different from last year. Last year, we didn't have this requirement of 5 clock hours or instructional time for the students on that day. This year, we do have an obligation to make sure that our teachers across that school day are giving 5 hours of learning activity. And not direct instruction, but 5 hours of learning activity in some form. We do have to do our best to ensure that all students have access to internet at home. We have gone through that, so we have hotspots that are available. We're reaching out to families who indicated that they don't, so that way we can get those hotspots to them. We need to make sure that whatever the instructional materials are going to be for those learning tasks, that students will have access to them at home. This is different than last year because last year students had a few days leading up to that day to know what things they should be at home, have with them at home. In reality, when we exercise one of these days, they probably won't have that lead up. And so the lessons that are developed, that are put together, we need to make sure that those materials are available to students in some form. Most likely that'll be through the internet.
One of the practices from my office, since I've been here, is keeping staff well informed of the process and decision-making timeline and everything else when we can anticipate due to weather an emergency day will happen. And we'll continue that so teachers can prepare students and say, well, the superintendent's been talking about it, make sure you're bringing your stuff home. If we have a snow day tomorrow, here's what you could expect, right? That I try not to surprise anybody that this is coming and try to be as transparent as possible with our staff as to, you know, what are the factors that could lead to this, what's the probability, those kinds of things. So in most state cases, our staff can prep students. You could have the water main break, the unanticipated emergency type of thing where this might be a challenge, but I'm sure, you know, we have, as you can see, we have very creative teachers that I'm sure will work through those things.
Yeah. Another thing that's on here, it's actually that last bullet point down there, this idea of time, pace, and means of learning. So the law requires us to put the control of that into our students' hands because on these days we recognize that some of them might potentially not have power at home or they might have an emergency that they need to tend to. So that impacts expectations of due dates and things like that. At the same time, we have the same understanding with our staff. Some of our staff might have emergencies they need to tend to on that day. So building those protocols to allow some buffer in there to account for situations like that. ISB is still working on some guidance for our special needs students and what appropriate learning would look like for them on that day. They haven't released those yet. When they do release those, we might have to adjust a little bit based on what they say. So we're still waiting on that piece, but that won't impact our ability to move through this process. We need to, and we did last year, have a process for students to register their attendance and for us to collect that and to mark who was present or engaged in that day. We need to make sure that our staff has access to the technology that they need. Opportunities for collective bargaining units to understand expectations on that day and to reach agreements. Notifications, like Hank said, making sure that we let everybody who needs to know that school will not be in session on that day. Second to last is we'll review it and revise any protocols that need to be changed. You know, after we do it the first time, we might find that something didn't work and we just regroup and revise for the next one. And then the last one is there's this requirement. We have most of the protocol from last year, but we need to finalize that, communicate it out, and train anybody who's involved in that 30 days prior to exercising one of those days. So we're getting really close to the potential of having to exercise one of those days. So what we're going to do is when we move into the hearing is you'll be voting on the resolution. If you approve it, then I work with DuPage County Regional Office of Education, file our paperwork there. Once they give us the all clear, then we go into training our staff and hopefully we're within that 30-day window before the first time that we exercise one of these days. So that's the information. One other side thing that is not a driver of this, but it's a side benefit, is looking at our construction schedule for this summer and how tight everything is going to be. That if we used these days instead of our emergency days, that widens that window a little bit, so that way our crews can be in there working on the day that we said that school was actually going to end this year. So just a side benefit to it. So that's the extent of the presentation. Does anyone have any questions for me before we move on?
Questions?
Hank, what is the collective bargaining aspect of this?
We already have an agreement with the DGA based on last year's e-learning day that outlines almost all of the same practices that would roll forward to this year. So we have to give them an opportunity to discuss it with us.
Right.
But so far.
Input's been good.
Yeah.
It's been a two-way conversation.
Right. I mean, some of the biggest concern from the union perspective is one of the things that Rob mentioned, that a teacher could end up without power or in, a situation where their house is not, taking care of their family or their safety of their house is the top priority, not necessarily teaching that day, and we would excuse that teacher in that case.
They wouldn't have to use a sick day or anything like that.
No, it would just be an emergency day, yeah. So, the most important thing is that people are safe, and that's why you're canceling school on those days, right? So you want to reflect that that's the case.
And just what would happen if a teacher did not have the technology needed? Would the district provide
Yeah, we
them?
provide every teacher with a laptop device. If they didn't have internet at home, we do have Wi-Fi hotspots.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are the same ones that Gina
The students
talked
could
about?
check
Yeah,
out. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So we have a surplus of those.
So the priority first is going to be getting approved to do an e-learning day versus implementing this across all curriculum.
No, yeah, the
priority is this e-learning day first, right? Out of the gate
absolutely.
that we're voting on.
Yes. Yeah. All of the other stuff was just to give you guys some background of, this isn't a brand-new concept to the district. Obviously, with last year's flexible learning day, almost all of our staff have practiced this for a single day. But to let you know that instructionally, there's sound practice here going on, that our teachers understand how to use this type of a structure, whether they're using it just as a way to break up groups within their regular classroom and to have a group of kids working on their own in one corner while they're focusing on another small group, which teachers have done forever, before even there was technology, right? When technology was whiteboards. Or whether it be in these more modern kind of flexible formats. Our teachers are practicing these skills, they're familiar with these skills, and I believe that they'll be successful if we have an emergency day and we have to carry on with school virtually, that we have talented professionals that'll be able to make sure that that not just happens, but happens with fidelity.
Now, if a teacher needed help or direction or instruction, are you planning on doing it during institute days? Are you going to have it on after school or
You mean in
stipend
terms
or?
of the training?
The training.
Yeah, say somebody said, hey, I'm not very comfortable with this, I need help, how would that time be provided to that teacher?
Yeah, so we actually have, we have a late start Monday coming up that's designed for building training. So the thought is that we're going to use that Monday morning to do this training for our teachers.
Okay.
Many of them were trained last year, but we
I
do
know
have
this,
new
yeah, I know this has
staff.
been ongoing, but just
Right.
if
Yep.
somebody said, hey,
Yeah.
where are you going to budget throughout the day to provide that teacher that asset?
Yeah, so it's probably going to come in that form of that late start Monday.
Okay.
And then the teachers also have to, in some way, to whatever extent, train their students on where to find their assignments on that day. And some of it might not be technology-based. It might be an English class where they're in the middle of reading a novel, and the assignment is just continue to read, and that's okay too.
Now regarding e-learning, I don't know if I read this or we said it, e-learning has been adopted by the state or what have you,
Correct,
right?
yeah,
Okay,
these
so
are the
we have to-
requirements. We don't have to do this. The board could choose not to allow for e-learning days. So what this resolution that we're proposing that you'll vote for later tonight would be to allow us to move forward with this.
Okay, I thought it was more so we want to talk through what it would look like for us.
Well, it's
But-
both.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
don't have to.
Correct. If you
I
chose
was
to
under
vote no,
impression-
then
okay.
we wouldn't, if the board voted no on this,
Okay.
then
Yeah.
emergency days would be like they always have been. You
Okay.
know, they'd be snow days, so,
Okay.
yeah. No, that's a good question.
Yeah.
All right, any others?
Anything else? So I would just, learning continues in the same semester. That's huge. I mean, really, it is, because
the semester class.
our semesters are already out of balance because we've done so much to try to squeeze, to get our finals in before winter break. So to, and all of our makeup days, our emergency days are all in the second semester. And so this really, I think, helps a lot. I mean, I don't think we want to de-emphasize how important that actually is, to be able to have that day in that semester is important. And then the question I have, so what's the likelihood, you're probably, I don't know how well you'll be able to answer this, seems like it would be easier to call a snow day because we have this opportunity.
Not necessarily, because we have an agreement with our partner elementary school districts that we collectively make that decision as a team. So if we are all either out or we're all either in. So we weigh that all as a team, although usually it's one school district feeling uncomfortable with going to school and then we all cancel at the same time. But somebody theoretically could be advocating for, I really feel like our kids need to be in school today for whatever reason that is. Remember, schools fill a huge responsibility for kids beyond learning. And this is what I always have to remind students of. As soon as the cold weather is coming in, I have students tweeting at me and emailing me about cancel school on whatever snow day, we need to go sledding. I do have a message that is prepared for them to remind them of all the services that schools provide kids, that for many kids, we are breakfast, we are lunch, we are their support system, we are, we are everything for those kids. And depending on the student, we may be more or less of that support system. Many students are send back, I'm sorry I even asked, after they get that message. But, so it is, canceling school, as fun as it might sound to be able to do that, is a very serious thing to have to do. And we do not take it lightly that it's something that we might have to do. At the same time, you're balancing it against the safety of your students and staff. You don't want to put them out in a situation where they could be in danger, right? So all those things are factored in. It's really discussed first at a county-wide level, then at a district-wide level, and then again at a county-wide level, and then again at a district level. Snow days start for me usually at about 10 a.m. the day before we know bad weather is coming, and the conversations go all night long, except for in the rare occasions when we know for sure it's a no-doubter, and those are the best ones. When we could call it off the night before and everybody knows to get ready and, not to get out in the morning, that's easy. But on the nights when we have to make the call at 5 in the morning, that is usually a no-sleep night for superintendents across DuPage County.
Perfect. Well, I was hoping I was teeing that one up for you.
Thanks.
Because I think that's
brings
an
back
important,
nightmares of last year at all of our bad weather.
It's important for people to know that, this doesn't change that. That we understand that there's a lot more involved. And there are parents that, if their kids have to stay home for school, how do I deal with that? It's nothing that we take lightly, so that there won't be some sort of tendency now to call more snow days because we have this capability. I thought that was something that needed to be said. So.
Right. And now that you've dragged me into the weeds, one of the key changes that was made between the old pilot policy and this one was that you used to have to make the call before 8 p.m. the night before if you were going to use one of these days. Which put superintendents in a really bad spot, because sometimes at 8 p.m. you don't have all of the knowledge you need to determine. So you had some schools that were calling it and moving to an e-learning day because they had to make that call by that time and didn't want to get trapped in the spot the next morning where they were forced to make the wrong call. So at least that requirement has been lifted for us here. But that's part of the fact that Illinois was doing a pilot program and learned from it, so that was good too.
Can I add one more thing related to that is, I forgot to mention it here. The law restricts us that we can only use e-learning days up to the maximum number of emergency days that we have scheduled. So we can't go over that 5. So, there's,
So it's
we're
really a
restricted
self-
in that way. So it's not like, oh, suddenly we want to use an e-learning day. We can only use the number of emergency days we have built in.
But it's based on how many emergency days we choose to set aside.
Right.
Well, by law that we have to set aside.
We have to set
We
aside.
have to set aside 5.
We are, oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was the case. So, all right.
Yep.
All right, any other? All right, so Freedom of Information Acts, right?
Yeah, we had them, and they're posted on the
Requests,
website as they always
yeah.
are.
Yeah, all right.
All right, and then,
So the,
hearing.
yeah, so the next item's a public hearing, so I invite anybody who wants to step forward and speak to the
talk
board.
specifically about the e-learning program.
Correct?
Yes.
For this, right. Anybody? Going once, going twice, gone. All right, so I don't hear any comments. We'll move on then to the consent agenda. And I'm hoping I can have a motion for the Board of Education to approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes A, personnel report, leave of absence certified, leave of absence classified, appointments classified, B, personnel report, resignations classified, C, financial pages, D, student parent handbook updates, E, acceptance of donation, District 99 Education Foundation grant, and F, pre-approval of proposed donation, Friends of Fine Arts, North High School. Do I hear somebody making that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion second? Yep. Can we have a roll call, please?
Cheryl Fuller,
Aye.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich. Terry?
Terry?
Terry.
Did we lose Terry? No vote from Terry.
No vote from Terry.
Rick Pavanato
Aye.
and Mike Davenport.
Aye. Motion's approved. Recommendations for action. First, approval of the resolution to adopt an e-learning program in lieu of the district's scheduled emergency days. We need a motion to that effect, please.
It was still blinking the same color.
There's only 3 of you.
Oh, sorry.
One of you's got to do it.
Oh,
I'm so moved.
second.
All right, Cheryl, second.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato,
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Aye, Terry.
Yeah, I'm going to say that we have our,
Oh, there we are, Terry.
Hey, Terry.
Hello?
Hey, Terry.
We have a
Hey.
motion on the floor to approve
Sorry,
the.
I got disconnected.
That's all right. Terry, we have a motion on the floor to approve the e-learning program in lieu of the district scheduled emergency days.
Oh, okay.
We need a yes or no vote from you.
Yes, please.
all right. Everybody else voted yes as well, so you know.
Okay.
So the motion carries. Next on the agenda, approval of calendar year 2020 insurance premiums. We need a motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2020 insurance premiums as presented.
So move to approve 2020 insurance
All right,
premiums.
Joanna, second? Oh, it's a stare down.
I second. I second.
Cheryl seconds.
Whatever it takes to be done.
Holding out for the.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler,
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Rick Pavanato.
Aye.
And Mike Davenport.
Aye, motion's approved. Number 9, old business. Anything to discuss? I didn't think so. New business, number 10? None? All right. 11, reception of visitors. This is an opportunity for people to step forward and speak to the board about anything that they pleased to speak to us about. I'd ask that you please limit your time to 3 minutes, and we'll go from there.
State your name.
Yes, please state your name and for the record.
Hi, I'm Big Rice, so I'm Cheryl Carey. Kathy Rice-Elts. I am a parent, and I have a son at Purdue, and they graduated from North. I have a son that graduated last year from North. He is a United States Marine as of October 4, and I have another son who is a sophomore at North. Very active in the community as well, and I have spoken at length with Mrs. Schwartz regarding the recognition of the military in our graduation, which is right now absent. And she had discussed with me that there had been some discussion over the summer about having those students that are enlisting in the military, the young men and women, standing up for a moment and then sitting back down. And I brought along with me Staff Sergeant Tomczyk and also Mr. Gilbert. We would like more recognition than that, in so much as an asterisk by these young men and women's names. I'm willing to do the footwork in terms of getting the little pocket constitution for each of these young men and women. I have, due to the limited timing, I will type up all these minutes for you, but we are way, way behind in terms of recognition for these young men and women in the military. For the state of Illinois, there are several schools that let these students wear their cord, or they let them wear the satchel, or they let them wear the patch. The military is willing to provide that for us at no cost to the district. And I feel like these are young men and women who we're recognizing our athletes, we're recognizing our academia, and we are not recognizing these young men and women who are willing to lay down their life for God and country. And standing up is wonderful. It's a start, and I really appreciate that. But you know what? Any one of your sons or daughters could stand up, and I wouldn't be able to support you as a mom, as I'm an educator as well at the college level. I wouldn't be able to support you. I wouldn't be able to help you through that 13 weeks of what those young men and women call hell on earth. I wouldn't be able to say, hey, how's it going? Or do you need someone to talk to? Or did they graduate from boot camp? What's their new MOS? How did we do as a district to get them ready? Because it's not just about being a warrior. It is about being a meaningful, caring, compassionate member of society. And I feel that is where Downers Grove needs to lift these individuals up, because we're not doing that right now. And with that being said, I would like to hand the floor over to Staff Sergeant Tomczyk, and I will, I've spoken to Mr. Thiel as well as on the phone, and I know that Mrs. Schwartz could not be here, and I have a pamphlet for her as well. So I will come back to the November meeting with more detailed minutes for you, with more talking points, but I just feel like we need to start talking about this now so that this is something that can happen this year. And I would be remiss if I did not say, as I said to Mrs. Schwartz, she said we cannot recognize them at senior night. There's just not enough time. And time versus giving your life, to me, is black and white. So, okay, there's no time in the senior awards night or in the academic piece. I can't fight with that. That, to me, is peanuts. I'm going to do a separate evening for these young men and women myself. And I'm doing that with a man through Howard University who founded an organization that honors men and women for situations such as this, where the school district is just not doing enough or doing anything. And I don't want to create any waves, but I want these students to receive the accolades they deserve. And the students that are in the lower poverty sections of Illinois are already doing this downstate. And there are students even in Cook County that their satchel is Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, whatever they're joining. And we're DuPage County. Why are we not doing this?
All right,
And
the materials that you have prepared, if you get them to me, I'll make sure that they make their way to the board. And if you would like to meet one-on-one, I'm happy to meet with you.
that would be great. I would just, ask for you to be open-minded to this, because this could be anyone's son or daughter, and that is one of the reasons why I brought Mr. Gilbert with, because if you know anything about the Gilberts, his son's name is on one of, in Four Circle, on one of the rocks. So at this point, I don't want to take any, I know I went over my 3 minutes, but I will get you the minutes. Thank you for letting me speak, and hopefully it does not come to the point of having to do something completely on my own and having, next to the asterisk, having those young men and women stand up, because these are young men and women that are going far. My son, in particular, as an example, could have graduated with a gold tassel with all of his college credits he received at North, and said, no, absolutely not. They will not recognize that I chose the Marines. And so I'm going to wear the generic. I will not be recognized as an academia. I want to be recognized as someone who wants to serve my country. And that is something I promised him I would follow through on, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you. Thank you very much.
I also won't use the mic. I know I only got about 3 minutes, so I'll go straight into introduction and then why I'm here. My name is Staff Sergeant Tomachek. I've been active duty service for 15 years, and now I'm a recruiter for the district, this district to be exact. One of my main concerns is the Marine Corps having access to a lot of these schools. For some of the schools, it's not bad at all. Some of the other schools, such as Downers Grove North, it's a little bit harder. And I think for the most part, we're not utilizing some of the resources that we can provide as the local recruiters around. Right off the back, something as simple as the leadership cohesion exercise, LCE, that we run for athletic departments. That could be anything from the sports team to PE. But it's an exercise we do to build teamwork, build decision-making and leadership skill sets, like you mentioned earlier, things that can build confidence. That's just one simple example. Another example, more to the extreme, would be some of the scholarship opportunities we have. So we have the ROTC scholarship, which is a $180,000 scholarship. We usually get about 10 spaces a year. Last year we only used 2. So that's an opportunity that I feel like a lot of students are missing out of. And if we have more access, we can communicate with the students. I feel like that's something we can provide to them. Another opportunity I feel like it's being heavily underutilized is the recruiters themselves. So I have the privilege of enlisting Benjamin Gazelle and Leland Rudd from Downers Grove North. One of the issues they had was attendance. Some other students I enlisted, they have academic issues. And where a counselor can talk to the parents and express their concerns, I feel like most counselors would be a little uncomfortable showing up at that family's home at 8 p.m. Whereas that Marine recruiter who has that individual enlisting with them has no gripes of that whatsoever. Those extra set of hands that voice that where maybe educators aren't getting through to that individual, we can definitely be a tool to be utilized, a resource. I've definitely helped a lot of young individuals get over whether it be academics or attendance or even just behavior, being that voice of reason or that disciplinarian when need be. With that being said, I feel like a lot of the issue is due to just miscommunication or lack of communication and lack of transparency. I didn't just come up here to give a complaint. I actually have a solution to suggest. We have the educators workshop that we do provide. United States Marine Corps will take educators such as yourself. We're looking for superintendents and principals to go, and it's an all expense trip. We take you to MCRD San Diego, California. It's a free vacation.
Yeah, wait until he tells you what you do. It doesn't sound like much of a vacation.
But you get to participate in some of the exercises if you want to, and you go over what recruits are learning, what they're expected to know, and get to witness the whole process from start to finish, obviously an accelerated rate. It's only a week long. So with your permission, I would like to pass some of these out.
Absolutely.
And tailing on the back of that, I did speak to administrators as close as Tinley Park High School, where they sent 4 of their principals to the CSD, and they saw firsthand what went on. And these recruits aren't just 80% is mental, but these recruits spend quite a bit of time in the classroom, learning the history, going over the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That is part of their testimony. And in terms of him being a recruiter, he's not just a recruiter. I would tag him as someone who has his phone on 24/7. And that is part of his job title that he doesn't boast about, but I know for a fact from paying your phone bill that in the middle of the night, he will answer the call.
Well, thank you for coming, and we appreciate your partnership with the school district.
I really appreciate your time to speak to the board.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gilbert?
Mr. Gilbert.
There's few issues that get me off the couch.
Well, it's good to see you this evening, Mr. Gilbert.
Can't hardly beat that. And I want to tell you, you guys have a lot more fun here than we ever had at the village council meetings.
That's why.
We'd have had that telecommunicating device at our council meetings. I might not have ever shown up. On a serious note, I want to thank you for all that you have done with the veterans and with the fallen. The things at North and South High are places that we go often. I take my grandsons, I have 4 grandsons, I think you know. I probably tell everybody that 50 times a day. But anyway, we go there and we visit with Uncle Tommy. And so thank you. That is a huge thing. I think the district does a fantastic job with veterans and with the fallen and recognition of all of it. So please don't misconstrue anything we say with our gratitude for that. What Kathy is, I think, bringing up is just the better recognition of those who have volunteered their service to go out in our behalf. You know, it's at a different stage. This is not about the fallen. This is about those who get up and before they even graduate from high school, these kids come in and say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to enlist in this service, and I'm going to go through whatever he had to go through out in San Diego, willingly and happily. So I wanted to just come, nothing more than to lend my voice, my support to her effort, perhaps a little star next to their name and, you know, in your bulletin at the graduation, in addition to what you already do. I certainly would support that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. All right, anybody else?
Anybody else? All right, now, looks like we're done with reception of visitors. Communications and announcements. Report on Legislative Education Network. Len.
We had a meeting with local legislators, DuPage County legislators and state legislators 2 weeks ago. And is it this Friday or next Friday? This Friday is Len's meeting on the property tax relief task force. Jeez. It's been a long day. So Dan and I'm assuming Dan will be there with me on Friday. So that's what's going on.
SACID, any?
I'll just share some of the talking points that we had. Dr. McGuffin, she's our new executive director. She shared that she's actively in SACID districts and is projecting that she would visit every classroom. She will also be visiting approximately 5 district board meetings this year. I don't know whether she's been in touch with us or not.
Yeah, I've talked to her several
you
times.
have, okay.
Yeah.
And she also mentioned that the leadership team is reviewing SACID's internal and external web presence. And the Student Wellness Committee has met and will be continuing to develop programming for its students. That was kind of what was on the agenda.
Thank you.
Plus
Thank
the
you.
budget's not-
District 99 Education Foundation. Terry?
Yes. Hi. I just wanted to remind everyone about Pizza Wars. Put this on your calendar. It's going to be February 27th in 2020. It's hard to believe we're talking about 2020, but that's basically what it is. And if anyone would still like to join the foundation, it's a great way to give back to the community and to our students at North and South High. So please contact Julia Beckman if you are interested in that type of giving. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Terry. IASB, that's me. We each got a copy of this resolution report, right? I don't know if you've all had a chance to look through it at all. I have, and I can tell you that happy to discuss any of these with you individually, and we can also discuss as a board in advance of our ISB Triple I conference in November. But in particular, the first resolution on student safety, the Resolutions Committee is recommending to adopt it, and I personally am not in favor of adopting that resolution. The rest I share the recommendation from the Resolutions Committee. So if you could get back to me with your input on that, or any of the others, if you disagree, let me know so that I can then bring that forward, and we can talk more about that, okay?
And we have traditionally held time at the board workshop in November. If you'd like us, just let us know if you'd like us to have that as an agenda item in advance of the next board meeting.
So that's
Or
a yeah.
board workshop.
I'm notifying you now.
No, okay.
Let's go.
It'll be there.
Let's go ahead
All right.
and do that. Maybe it'll be a quick one, but
That's fine.
just the same.
Yep.
Let's do that.
All right, it's
All right.
there. I have
and-
2 items.
Okay.
One is, our principals aren't here today because they are at their annual workshop themselves, learning over today and
Yep.
tomorrow.
Yep.
But I would also like to recognize and encourage everyone to celebrate in this week, which is Principal Appreciation Week, ending on Friday, which is Principal Appreciation Day. So this has been a day since 1990. Every year, the governor re-recognizes it, and Governor Pritzker did as well for this year. So this is a great week to reach out to any school administrator, building administrator, that's what it's allocated for, whether that be a principal or assistant principal or associate principal, any of those folks in our district or any other district that's had an impact on your life or a student's life, and to thank them for the work that they do. So I'd encourage everybody to do that this week. Also, Saturday, Rob and I and a group of our equity team went down to Normal, Illinois to be recognized by the Illinois State Board of Education, commending our District 99 equity team for meritorious service for the work that we've done over the last several years in the Those Who Excel Award and recognition. So here it is, and I will honorarily present it to the board president.
Thank you so much.
So it's nice to be recognized for all the hard work that everybody's been doing across the district. Some of it you heard about tonight.
Well, we knew it was awesome. It's nice that there's other people outside of the district that are also as smart as we are to recognize how great our team is, and what they've accomplished thus far and continue to accomplish, and as well encourage everyone to pass along some good words to our 2 principals, which are I feel best principals in the state of Illinois. So we're very fortunate to have both. Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right. Upcoming board meetings, we have a meeting on the 11th, a special workshop meeting, and that is going to be in the South High School Library, so change of venue. So I'll make a note of that. And then we have our regular business meeting on the 18th at 6:30 p.m. right here. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Holding out for the gift bouquet.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ayes. Meeting adjourned.